Дамы и господа, уважаемые коллеги, дорогие друзья, разрешите наш 21-й социальный международный конгресс, посвященный проблеме цифровизации в условиях пандемии, миссия социального университета будущего считать открытым.
Знакомые лица своих давних и новых друзей. Вместе с ними хочу научиться ничего не жалеть для людей. И покуда у сердца есть силы людям делать добро поспеши. Я люблю тебя, слышишь, Россия, эта песня идет от души. Ничего не жалей, ничего не жалей, ничего не жалей, не жалей, ничего не жалей для людей, для друзей огонька, сердце для старика, не жалей, для России жизни своей, жизни своей. Жизнь готовит тебе испытания. Если сердце твое горячо, берегите слова сострадания, а в беде подставляйте плечо. Только время все споры рассудит, а добрее и разле, что сильней. Не убудет души, не убудет, не жалейте души для людей.
Сегодняшний конгресс и программу будут вести председатель научного комитета Петрова Елена Алексеевна, доктор филологических наук, профессор.
И вместе со мной Михаил Васильевич Фирсов, доктор исторических наук, профессор, один из крупнейших специалистов социальной сферы Российской Федерации. Ну, а поскольку наш конгресс посвящен 30-летию Российского государственного социального университета, и вещание в режиме онлайн ведется из стен нашего университета, разрешите для приветственного слова предоставить слово Хамрову Андрею Анатольевичу, исполняющему обязанности ректора нашего университета. Пожалуйста, Андрей Анатольевич.
Дорогие друзья, дамы и господа, от души поздравляю вас с крупным международным событием, 21-м Международным конгрессом, который проходит по инициативе РГСУ и приурочен к 30-летию со дня его рождения. Участники университета вместе с коллегами из других стран за все годы проведения социальных конгрессов всегда обсуждали самые злободневные и актуальные вопросы нашей социальной жизни. Сегодня эти вопросы связаны с пандемией. Вся деятельность социальной сферы разных стран изменялась и перешла в цифровой формат. И только специалисты, объединившись, могут дать ответы на самые злободневные вопросы жизни общества в этих условиях. Мне приятно осознавать, что наш университет находится на передовой научной мысли в области цифровизации, социальной сферы. Желаю конгрессу плодотворной работы и надеюсь, что результаты вашего труда внесут значимый вклад в решение круга обозначенных проблем.
Спасибо. И слово предоставляется для приветствия замечательному мирового уровня специалисту Валентина Рикардо. Это лауреат премии Эрнста Геккеля, это лауреат Нобелевской премии. Пожалуйста, Валентине, слушаем вас.
Good day to everybody, distinguished participants to the 30th anniversary of the Russian State Social University. It is a very important moment for the university, and I wish you a very good and productive conference. I'm pleased to give you some few thoughts about the situation of pandemic, the COVID-19, and the role that digitalization has had in the education university. The COVID pandemic was truly the first, let's say, real pandemic that has spread all over the world. This is the first time that all the planet is affected by the COVID, going from United States, Russia, Europe, to the little Samoa Islands or the small places in remote places. So the COVID is really everywhere. It's truly global. And also in Italy we had, as you remember, a very difficult situation, particularly in March 2020, when Italy was the first European country to be hit from the pandemic, and the infections was very high, and particularly in the northern part of Italy, in the Milano region, Lombardy region, there was a high rate of people that died for the disease of COVID. And in that particular emergency, everything was locked down, and also the education university were very much affected. We had a very long period of education given by distance tools like now web conferencing and all the remote connections. And the first impression we had was that, first of all, we had to imagine and create a new way of making lessons, to be creative, to be able to involve the students and not to lose their attention, because one of the most critical part was that most of the students were losing attention and not really participating very much. So we had to invent also new graphics, new styling, new presentations that were more appealing for the students. However, it was really problematic, because the relation with the professors is very important. So we think that the human needs are still there, that to have social contacts, to interact, to talk. But of course, this is also a new challenge, and the new technologies are also appearing. For example, the new initiative that is being launched by Facebook and other social networks to use the Mediaverso as a new way to create basically an environmental digital experience that ensemble a little bit the digital twins that in the industry engineers are using for replicating objects in virtual environments. So I don't know what will be the future of this technology, but certainly they will be boosted by these conditions of remote contacts. And in reality, there have been also some advantages, because, for example, in professional work, reducing the travels by cars and airplanes and trains has been also important from the environmental point of view. We are in a time that we discuss a lot about sustainability issue, the climate change, the greenhouse gas emissions, and in some way reducing the trips using particular airplanes, it is seen as a positive advantage. But again, remain on the background the importance of maintaining social human contacts, and also another very critical point was to reach the students that were in more poor conditions. So there was a public investment to donate electronic equipments to the schools for the students to be able, especially the ones that didn't have the possibility to have a digital connection to follow the university courses. So well, it's a future in some way, but also it's also something that we need to control and limit. And so maybe as a famous philosopher said in the past, Mr. Socrates said that the in medium stat virtus. So in the middle probably is the truth. Thank you a lot for your attention, and I wish again a great conference.
Как приятно, Михаил Васильевич, что нас поздравляют такие известные люди, лауреаты Нобелевской премии. Как приятно, что в адрес университета поступило столько приветствий от разных университетов мира. Все они расположены на сайте нашего университета, и все участники Конгресса смогут их прочитать, а нам с вами, кажется, надо перейти к деловой программе пленарного заседания.
Да, Елена, тем более, когда мы говорим про ту повестку дня, которую сегодня вы обозначили, это тема, которая волнует достаточно большое количество ученых по всему миру, и вот один из первых, кто будет сегодня выступать, это профессор из Вены, из Австрии, профессор Рубен Манасакян, который как раз и поделится своими впечатлениями, своими мнениями о том, как развивается процесс цифровизации в условиях пандемии.
Hello. I would like to welcome participants of the meeting. And my name is Ruben Natsakanyan. I am professor of Department of Environmental Sciences and Policy in the Central European University in Vienna. And in my today's presentation, I would like to talk about positive and negative sides of online teaching. We know that due to COVID, we have to switch to online teaching, and many, of course, professors and students complained. But if we look in more details, I think we can easily find negative but also some positive sides. So what are the positive sides of online teaching from my point of view? I think that years before COVID, many universities already had started to operate through so-called learning management systems. In other words, software like Moodle, like Blackboard, like many others, which were considered as lecture supporting tools. Professors could put online some teaching materials, handouts of the lectures, articles, even books, some interesting data, statistics, whatever. And they could maintain communication with students through blogs, through questions, online questions and answers, etc. And all this was considered as a support instrument. And all of a sudden, because of COVID, because of need to switch to online, it became a mainstream. So every university, every school is obliged to do it, and lectures are recorded and also put online. So it's a kind of completion of this trend, which I think is useful and helpful for students to have such a background information. For us, we are a big international university, and of course for us, a lot depends on ability of students from other countries to come to teaching site in Vienna. And because of COVID restrictions this year, many students were not able to come. It was a real tragedy, especially for students from Africa, from Latin America, from Asia, from many other places. And in the previous situation, it would be a disaster. They could not complete their thesis, their academic year. But with the help of this online teaching, with the help of this online mechanisms, they were able to learn, to study. Of course, it was not, and we will discuss it later, it was not as productive maybe as an online or offline teaching, but at least they managed and they got their degrees, got their lectures, and got their, they didn't waste this year. Another positive thing associated with online learning is ability to invite visiting lecturers from all over the world. Of course, you still need to negotiate with them, you still need to maybe provide some compensation to them, but of course it's now much easier than in the past when a physical presence of the teacher in the class was necessary. Now you don't have to organize expensive travel, expensive accommodation. You just negotiate when a person can deliver a lecture, you organize internet connections, etc. And here we are. So it's, I think it's also a very positive sign. Also, this allows many students to communicate more in depth with their teachers when before maybe online or Zoom link was regarded as a some kind of oddity. odd thing, strange thing, but nowadays it's becoming commonplace, and very often you have long conversations with students to discuss things one by one. And I think the personal communication, oddly enough, is becoming even more intense now than it was in the past. And finally, many universities who were thinking of buying new equipment or thinking of providing new equipment now are really forced to do it, which means that the educational base in many places is upgraded. So far, so good about the positive sides, but what are the negative sides of online teaching? I think, first of all, the most important thing is that unfortunately not all of us students, and as well as some professors even, do not have adequate home office conditions. Sometimes we have, I don't know, slow internet, small children running around, not enough isolation or individual cabinet in the flat. Sometimes we have poor internet connections, hardware is outdated, etc., etc. So it's becomes very individual. This link and good internet is very vital for good education, and those people who cannot obtain them put into disadvantage. The major problem, of course, with online teaching relates to universities and classes where you really need practicals, like physical experiments, chemical laboratories, study of minerals. I'm not talking even about medical schools, veterinary schools, where you really need to work with objects in the classroom, in the lab, or in the field. If we are talking about field departments like soils, vegetation, landscapes, whatever. And of course, this is a major problem, which I don't know how can be solved at this stage. Maybe later on, some virtual laboratories and virtual equipment will appear. Maybe that will be possible. But nowadays, I think it's a major problem. But even more, I think, devastating for universities is seeds of the normal university life, personal communications, personal interactions between students, destruction of normal student conditions. Because we all were students, and we remember that, of course, teaching and studying in the university is not only sitting in the classrooms and listening to the lectures and seminars. A lot of very important things that happen outside the classroom. When you talk to your friends, you talk sometimes to your professors tete-a-tete, you try to discover new things, you browse through the library, you live within a society, within a community. And of course, nowadays, many young people are already living their lives online. They're spending a lot of time in chats and all the social media, social networks, etc., etc. And for many of them, maybe university life was the only place where they can still have, so to say, normal social life. And even if this format will go online, in the end of the day, we will have young people who probably have no experience of being, in the socium, who can work in the group, who can easily communicate with people without using all sorts of gadgets and chats, etc. So I think this is a problem. And the last but not the least, this situation puts many universities, especially in the provincial universities, in a huge disadvantage, because in order to have a normal, adequate online teaching, you really need your classrooms to be equipped with proper technology, with video cameras, fast internet, nice modern computers, etc., etc. Of course, provincial poor universities with poor technical base will be in a big disadvantage. Okay, if online courses will be open, if many universities open their online courses for everybody, it means that students from these provincial universities can take online courses from elsewhere, from other places. But again, how this will affect their study, how this will affect their learning, it's another big issue. So I think we are living in a very exciting and very kind of interesting moment in our lives. The switch from offline to online is really dramatic. And let's try to enhance its positive sides and try to somehow negate its negative sides. Thank you very much for your attention.
Мне кажется, прекрасный доклад. Я думаю, что тема цифровизации в условиях пандемии, она волнует и ученых, и она вообще на самом деле касается нас всех. Да? Потому что сегодня вот та даже форма, в которой идет Конгресс, она невозможна была бы без цифровизации. И такие мероприятия международного масштаба не могли бы проходить, если бы в условиях пандемии мы не столкнулись с возможностями новыми, которые дала цифровизация. Однако мы продолжаем действовать в рамках нашей программы пленарного заседания. И я с удовольствием предоставляю слово доктору политических наук, декану гуманитарного факультета РГСУ Галине Юрьевне Никипарец-Такигава. Ее доклад «30-летию цифровизации социальных пространств как глобальный вызов и миссия университета будущего» сейчас прозвучит для вас. Пожалуйста, включаем.
Great day and the 30th anniversary of the Russian State Social University, and of course we talk a lot about our past, glorious past, and we should think also about our glorious future. And digitalization is often seen as a trend, but at the same time as a threat in the field of higher education, because this field is usually considered non-digital, where the process of education and upbringing of educated citizens should be organized in such a way that, according to Socrates, it would be ideal in the way of personal discussions and dialogues between a professor and a student. The pandemic and the subsequent further digitalization of the education and growth of the distance learning environment, on the one hand, have significantly changed this ideal classical educational environment. But on the other hand, they gave a huge opportunity to our society and the higher education system, as well as our universities as part of it, turn more effectively and rapidly into an inclusive space. The concept of full inclusion in the context of education is normally seen in a narrow sense as intended for disabled students and member staff. If we use a broader concept of an inclusive educational environment, we can think of others. An inclusive society is a society that overrides differences of race, gender, class, generation, and geography, and ensures inclusion, equality of opportunity, as well as capability of all members of society. Full inclusion means the absence of any social boundaries, geographical, cultural, religious, economic, physical, age, etc., etc. And in this sense, digitalization is an opportunity and a perspective for us at universities to develop in the direction of broader groups of students. Of course, distance learning is a great opportunity for people with disabilities to participate in classes from home. But at the same time, it is a great opportunity for working people of different age who like to continue their education. Or, for example, for busy parents who are temporary at job leave, babysitting their kids, or who are desperate to spend time at home. It's also an opportunity for aging population who are ready to study, and for many other potential students. I would discuss only one of these groups of potential students, very important group of potential students, because one of modern demographical trends of our time is unstoppable aging of the population. In Russia, for example, every fourth citizen, 25.9% to be precise, is above 60. In Moscow, the quantity of senior residents is even higher. According to the data in 2019, men of 60 years old and above and women of 55 years old and above counted to 27.7% of overall Moscow citizen number. Furthermore, the life expectancy in Moscow was followed to 74.39 years among men and 81.19 years among women. One of the most effective mechanisms to solve this problem of aging population is education. It is supposed as the way to fit any changes in social environment, as a technology to improve the quality of important part of human capital. The education is viewed as a measure of state social policy to solve the task of socialization, which has already become a part of rapidly increasing senior population in Russia. The part of state social policy which is aimed to resocialize senior citizens is education, and its importance is as high as it never was before. Educational programs for this category of people are gaining their status as ever-increasing sector of educational services in terms of value. We suppose that senior age market has a great potential for the Russian State Social University, our university, due to both active growth of 60+ aged population and their business activity. This market also of interest for Russian State Social University because of its special status, which was built over years, brick by brick, among other universities. The mission of our university is closely related with the implementation of state social policy, and also Russian State Social University is among those few educational institutions in Russia that highlight the focus on training for the realization of the social state policy. According to these facts, the development of our university is seen as to be involved in education for senior category of citizens, or silver students. Hard work in this type of market would both help solving strategic tasks to increase the share of Russian State Social University in Russian and worldwide educational demand till 2025, as written in our strategy, up to 1%. And would also strengthen the image of our university as the first state social university, as we proudly pronounce ourselves. Of course, it is not automatic and easy way to develop. As the first serious challenge in the implementation of preparation and desire of Russian universities to work actively in this market is low-motivated silver students, senior people, representatives of the third age, of course in comparison with foreign peers. A research conducted by Higher School of Economics demonstrates that as of 2017 in Russia, the involvement in formal and non-formal education for the population group aged 55 to 64. This is the beginning of the third age, or senior age, or silver age. In Russia, it is just 7%, while in EU countries, it is 33%. A very big difference, so low motivation of students. Another problem is that universities, due to the lack of research of the issue, don't understand clearly what the third age education means, often considering this as a hobby or an entertainment activity. And this is the reason why the universities don't use their own academic potential in full force for the specialization in the third age education, which is implemented in preparation of specialists at the main faculties of the university. The universities don't disclose their full educational potential and reduce the spectrum of educational services that may be interesting to the consumer in this market. Digitalization is a great help if we aim to involve more and more silver students in the education. They can study from home, over the board, without excessive travel and cost. They can obtain dual degrees and combined degrees in different universities. Same opportunities to other students, you can say, but given the age of senior or silver students, it is very, very important. At the same time, it is a way to an inclusive university that erases borders between generations together with other borders. And it is the mission of the University of Future. An inclusive university is a very progressive model of the University of Future. And our university, Russian State Social University, can lead the process and be the first example. Russian State Social University as a federal level multidisciplinary university ready to offer to the representatives of the third age whole range of programs given in the university, as well some unique programs being specialized for the needs of this category of students. Thank you very much for your attention.
Та тема, которая была поднята господином Брайаном Паком, она сегодня, конечно, очень актуальна. И мы сегодня видим, что проблема цифрового сервиса сегодня является таким актуальным, если хотите, трендом для многих областей, сегментов экономики. Но, тем не менее, цифровой сервис является и необходимым условием развития различных разных университетов. И не последнюю роль сегодня цифровой сервис играет развитие, прежде всего, по Российского государственного социального университета. Анастасия Сергеевна Конишова, директор научно-исследовательского института социальных инноваций, поделится своими впечатлениями, мнениями, видением этой проблемы применительно к нашему университету.
Ну, она поделится и опытом, потому что цифровой сервис РГСУ – это не теория, это практика. Да, Анастасия Сергеевна, мы вас слушаем.
The Russian State Social University is currently one of the most digitalized universities in the country. The digitalization began in 2014. Products supporting the educational process and the process of admission and support of students were consistently introduced at the university. Since 2016, the electronic learning system has been actively used and developed. In 2018, the university introduced an electronic portfolio of students. The corporate portal is actively used by teachers and staff of the university. All the informational products and platforms used for digitalization of the educational and supporting process, administrative and economic activities work in a single information exchange circuit. The choice was made of introducing platforms developed in Russia that provides reliable storage, processing, and protection of data of students and teaching staff. 2020 was a difficult year for many educational organizations. The emerging coronavirus pandemic, a long lockdown, this forced many educational organizations to rebuild their processes. And because of the high level of digitalization, Russian Social State University transferred its work to a remote online format in the shortest possible time and without downtime and disruption of the educational process. The year 2020 has become an incentive for the development of digital services. Admission of applicants and new employees has been transferred 100% to digital form. In 2021, the development of existing products is actively underway.
Ну, я с большим удовольствием еще раз прослушала доклад Анастасии Сергеевны. Я как бы в курсе того, как у нас в университете это происходит. Действительно, надо сказать, что наш университет фактически один из первых университетов страны, кто осуществил свою цифровизацию внутренних учебных процессов. И для нас уже все то, о чем она рассказывала, это, в общем-то, то, с чем мы живем ежедневно. Это даже не наше будущее, это наше настоящее. Однако мы движемся и вперед, и мне очень приятно, что цифровизация касается самых разных областей социальной сферы, и особенно в условиях пандемии, когда университет был вынужден перейти на большое количество занятий в режиме онлайн, мы столкнулись с тем, что даже такие специальности и такие направления подготовки, как искусство, дизайн, и тут педпроцесс пошел в сторону цифровизации и был реально переведен на рельсы цифровизации. И мне очень приятно предоставить слово доктору искусствоведения, профессору факультета искусств нашего университета Переверзевой Марине Викторовне. Тема ее доклада — цифровизация в области искусства и социально-культурной жизни, проблемы и перспективы. Пожалуйста, Марина Викторовна.
My name is Marina Pereverzeva. I am Doctor of Art and Professor of Russian State Social University. My report is named Digitalization in the Field of Art and Social Cultural Life, Problems and Prospects. The report is dedicated to the specifics of the use of artificial intelligence in the musical composition. As a result of theoretical analysis of the algorithms for the intelligent system work, the range of capabilities of such systems and prospects for their further improvement were determined here. Modern programs designed for composing and improvising music were systematized, action algorithms were compared, and advantages and disadvantages of artificial intelligence as an instrument for composing music were determined also. Improving the algorithm of AI work in the field of musical composition will determine the long-term future of its application and the viability of computer-created musical works. As assistive systems, computer will not replace a person in creativity, but being included in the writing process, they will help person to realize his ideas and ingenious creative work. The prospects for using AI in musical composition are not to copy existing music in different styles, but to search for completely new sounds, styles, images, and sound effects, as well as to discover new and limitless opportunities for composing music. The advantage of the development and application of AI in musical composition is opportunity that is given to everyone, not only professionals, but also amateurs, who want to touch the magic of musical and creative process, immerse themselves in this fascinating activity, creatively express themselves, develop and increase creative abilities, embody by means of music an ingenious idea that will become a new word in the knowledge about world and mankind. When new technology is introduced to society, society generally takes some time to develop the use of it fully. Considerable work has also been done to enlarge the capabilities of musicians. Composers have used computers to realize their conceptions of musical unperformable by human, or as a means of develop composition ideas which would require amounts of calculation unthinkable without the use of computer. Composer who imagines such novel music and feels that it can be defined or better understood using an algorithm can now write a computer program to test or realize the imagined music. Computer music can be roughly divided into two kinds: music composed with computer and music composed by a computer. Artificial intelligence today finds application in the process of digital processing of sound and theory of knowing music, composing and performing musical works. Abbreviation even appeared in English, AIM, meaning Artificial Intelligent Music. AI understanding of musical images and emotions is studied by science named cognitology. For these purposes, several computer programs have been developed that possess AI for creating music by imitating the process of human mental and creative activity. The sequence of these processes is fixed in the algorithm of artificial intelligence operations, which allows the program to perform creative functions. Created in 2016 in Luxembourg, program The Artificial Intelligent Virtual Artist creates soundtracks for any media in different styles and emotional moods. Styles are determined as modern music for cinema, electronic, pop music, ambient. This is electronic music based on modulations of sound timbre and characterized by atmospheric and enveloping sound. Then rock music, fantasy, jazz, shanty, cinema music of 20th century, tango and Chinese music. AIVA algorithms are based on the architecture of deep AI self-learning. The IVA program was used to create a rock composition called On the Edge, as well as this pop composition Break Free, with the participation of pop singer Taryn Southern during her work on album 2018 I Am Artificial Intelligence. However, initially the program was developed to generate music in classical and romantical tradition, and many tracks of IAVA, for example, Genesis Symphonic Fantasy in A-moll, Opus 21st, today are included in the playlists for listeners as sample of academic music. Thanks to this composition, AIVA was recognized as a virtual composer whose works are registered by International Copyright Society. AIVA is able to compose emotional soundtracks for movies, video games, commercials, and any other type of entertainment content. AIVA studies the art of composition music by reading a large collection of musical scores written by professional composers, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, etc., and created a mathematical model for representing what music is. This is model which is used to compose modern media music for TV and radio. Automatic music generator Morpheus is the development of Queen Mary University of London. This intelligent system is based on the optimization technology and the algorithm for finding variables in the dataset, selecting the best option from the possible, used to create new plays in given tonality, duration, instrumentation by converting the original samples. The creators emphasize that AI independently create music with a certain structure and emotion. Optimization technology allows you to integrate the selection processes of thematic material and principles of composition from exemplary plays in order to generate logically structured form with repetition and development, just as in traditional symphony music. The plays composed by Morpheus were performed at concert halls in Stanford and London. Another direction of AI development in the field of musical composition is the cloud-based, controlled, intelligent platform of musical composition called Ampere Music. This system generates unique musical plays based on user-selected mood parameters, sound, emotion, style, durations. After you select these options, you can make additional changes before you complete your composition. This platform is based on data from the musical sample library, huge library. Ampere Music provides both people without musical education and professionals an opportunity to quickly compose original music. Thanks to the AI algorithm, it's trained on data material from large collection of samples of musical works of wide style spectrum. Secondly, the algorithm is able to identify the key parameters of each musical composition and predict the nature of the sound that user wants to create. The main difference between the Ampere program and the musical creators of last generations is that the result of the Ampere AI did not require serious alteration by the person. The only program independently, completely creates the song during few seconds, selects the sound of melody to the text in accordance with its rhythmic structure, chord sequence and instrumentation. Ampere Music is simultaneously composer, performer, and producer of artificial intelligent music, which allows you to instantly create and perform original music without requiring any musical training. In fact, this is the first AI music creator technology presented on the world market. After the official presentation of the Amber platform, the Associated Press and Hearst Television began using it to create music content for their programs and reports. Amber Music allows the creators of media content to simplify their workflow and avoid the temporary and budgetary costs associated with authors' music. Therefore, it seems to me the prospect of AI in the widespread use of the platform in media, radio and television, in film industry, video games, advertising, theater art. Music created with help of AI Amber receives an international, free and indefinite license for its use, avoiding numerous legal and financial problems related to copyright. In addition, Amber is also an educational program acting as creative partner of artists, musicians and composers who can collaborate with AI in process of creating their own music. One of the most recent and no less large and promising research project called Flow Machine ended with creation of Flow Machine's Composer platform. It includes a complex set of algorithms and database of 15 million songs, which are analyzed now from the point of view of laws of development of material and even emotion, color of musical sound. Flow Machine's Composer is able to independently compose an original song in given style, performed with a certain feeling. The program algorithm samples songs in accordance with a given style. The analytical model identifies typical style features, and generator simulates and changes them based on Markov chain, starting the mechanism for creating its own composition. The same analytical model calculates the probability of certain chord sequences and selects the optimal one based on the Markov chain. The progress of AI of this system is that person can both fix the favorite version of any musical fragment and launch a new generation of composition. The principle of random sampling forms the basis of the single Daddy's Car, generated by AI based on the melodies of the Beatles. The use of AI in the field of musical composition opens up prospects for the development of the sphere of wide, accessible, democratic, and personalized musical creativity of both professionals and amateurs. A big problem for AI was and remains the understanding of creative and artistic decisions, which sometimes cause controversy and difficulties even among specialists in field of culture and art. Artificial intelligence is devoid of inspiration, which is a necessary component of genuine art, and is still not able to embody the original artistic concept. However, it will definitely change the process of musical and creative activity of man in the future. Thank you.
В этой связи мне хотелось бы сказать, что сегодня цифровизация она охватывает различные направления, различные сегменты экономической жизни и жизни любого общества. И, конечно же, будет для нас интересно послушать доклад госпожи Гуанин Чао, представителя доктора наук Анхойского педагогического университета, директора по маркетингу, который нас познакомит развитием, прежде всего, цифровой экономики в Китае в условиях пандемии. Пожалуйста.
Hello everyone, I'm Guan Chao from China. I'm doing my PhD in economics at Smolensk State University. Today my topic is economic development of the People's Republic of China in the context of a pandemic. I will introduce in 4 parts. Part 1, the impact of COVID-19 on China's economic development. It has 2 aspects, the direct and indirect losses. The direct losses mainly come from its negative impact on supply and demand, and the cost borne by the public sector for pandemic control. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused losses in varying degrees to the consumption, investment, and export, among which the impact of consumption is the most prominent. The GDP fell 6.8% year on year in the first quarter of 2020. The flow of labor has been severely restricted or even suspended. food, medical supplies, and other basic necessities, resulting in short-term price increase. According to the statistics from the outbreak to February 13, 2020, budgets at all levels have invested more than 18 billion RMB, and the total costs in all parts of China have reached 300 billion RMB. Indirect losses are mainly reflected in two aspects. The pandemic has put enormous pressure on employment, and the temporary impact of industrial shutdown will be magnified to long term. Part 2. China's economic recovery amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the impact of the pandemic, China became the only major economy to achieve positive growth in 2020, with its economy still growing by 2.3%. According to the latest economic data, China's GDP was up 9.8% year-on-year in the first 3 quarters of 2021. It's worth noting that according to a report by UNCTAD, FDI in China bucked the trend to become the world's largest recipient of foreign direct investment in 2020, despite a sharp drop in the global total. Part 3. Factors influencing China's rapid economic recovery under the pandemic. China's economic recovery has been led by the country's growing economic strength and the rapid response, accurate and effective policy regulation and the Chinese government, and its commitment to multilateralism. Last part. Characteristics and trends of China's economic development in the post-pandemic era. According to the average data of the past 2 years, China's economy is obviously characterized by stronger external demand than domestic demand, and greater supply than demand. In the post-pandemic era, China's economic development will have some changes. The first is stimulate the innovation of business forms and promote the development of intelligent and online production and lifestyles. The second is promote the development of the digital economy. The third is accelerate the construction of new smart cities and improve the levels of social governments at all levels. After the storm, the sea remained. That's all. Thank you.
Спасибо большое нашей китайской коллеге. Замечательный и интересный доклад. Мы все знаем об успехах Китая и понимаем, что в области цифровой экономики и в сфере цифровизации процессов образования Китай сегодня заметно лидирует, не в обиду другим странам. А я с удовольствием предоставляю слово Уралову Арсению Анатольевичу, руководителя инжинирингового центра нашего университета. Это центр «Инфостар», и его доклад посвящен индексам цифровизации, учета социального фактора, оценки цифровизации социальной сферы России.
Report indices of digitalization, taking into account the social factor, assessing the digitalization of the social sphere in Russia. Uralov Arseniy, of the Engineering Center Infostar RSSU. Analysis of most international rankings in the field of digitalization and ICT shows the presence of a group of indicators characterizing the processes of digitalization and the effects of digitalization for the social sphere. The indicator personnel, the effect, involvement of consumers, trust. International indices assessing the digitalization of the social sphere, the Digital Economy and Society Index, DESI, the Digital Society Index 2019. A number of interesting indicators used in the international rankings. Level of consumer confidence in digitalization in general. Trust in the ability of governments to protect the privacy of citizens, including personal data. Transparency in the use of personal data by businesses. Robot-to-worker ratio, the ratio of the number of robots to enterprises. Percent of the population who call an Uber taxi make a purchase on Amazon or post a video on Netflix. In Russia, the assessment of digitalization of the social sphere is reflected in several main methods today. Method 1, methodology for assessing the progresses and effectiveness of digital transformation of urban economy in the Russian Federation, IQ of cities. The purpose of assessing the IQ rating of cities is to assess and monitor on an annual basis the progress and effectiveness of the digital transformation of the urban economy in the Russian Federation as a part of the Smart City project. The methodology for calculating the IQ index of cities was approved by order of the Ministry of Construction of Russia, number 2924, dated December 31, 2019. At the end of 2018, the IQ index was calculated for 191 cities of the Russian Federation. In 2021, an automated update of the IQ methodology of cities was carried out. In accordance with the developed methodology, the Ministry of Construction of Russia assesses the IQ of cities on an annual basis, at least until 2024. 10 directions of digital transformation of urban economy and 47 indicators for assessing the level of digitalization. Innovation for the urban environment, 6 indicators. Intelligent systems of social services, 4 indicators. Intelligent public safety systems, 5 indicators. Smart housing and communal services, 5 indicators. City governance, 5 indicators. Smart city transport, 11 indicators. Intelligent environmental safety systems, 4 indicators. Tourism and service, 4 indicators. Communication network infrastructure, 1 indicator. Tasks of assessing the IQ rating of cities. Assessment, comparison, and ranking of cities in the Russian Federation by the level of digital transformation. Determination of the main directions and segments of the digital transformation of the urban economy, which have the greatest and least impact on the socio-economic state of urban economies. The following methodology is the Digital Development Index of the constituent entities of the Russian Federation. The purpose of the rating is to promote the adoption of management decisions focused on the implementation of the digital transformation process in order to improve the quality of life of the population and ensure equal access to digital technologies. Rating objectives, assessment, comparison, and ranking of the constituent entities of the Russian Federation by the level of digital transformation. Determination of the strengths and growth reserves of digital transformation in the constituent entities of the Russian Federation. Conceptual framework for the digital transformation process. Factors: human capital, investment climate, science, technology and innovation, institutional environment, digital infrastructure, information security. Effects: social effects, economic effects, stakeholders, household sector, general government, science and education sector, business sector. The third and main index in terms of digitalization of the social sphere, an index that Russia is ready to scale to the CIS and the world, the index of society's readiness for digitalization from ANO dialogue. The autonomous non-profit organization Dialogue has built a network of regional management centers and developed uniform indicators, assessing the development of information infrastructure in the regions, the speed of reaction of representatives of government body to messages from citizens on the internet, the quality of official publics on social networks. Dialogue regularly conducts appropriate ratings to align digital processes throughout the country at the level of public authorities. Dialogue represented Russia at the United Nations Internet Governance Forum, IGF, and proposed to develop an international digitalization readiness index so that all countries receive a single tool for assessing society's perception of digital transformation processes. At the Eastern Economic Forum, EEF, in September, Dialogue presented the Citizens' Readiness for Digitalization Index and its Readiness for Digitalization Index methodology, index for assessing the development of digitalization and the perception of digitalization by the population. The concept of the index is to assess the attitude of society to digital transformation based on the activity of online communication of public authorities and their involvement in dialogue with citizens, as well as the perception of digital processes by citizens themselves. The index allows us to assess the level of citizens' trust in the process of communication with the state through digital means, as well as the difference between the level of development of digitalization in particular country and the society's perception of the achieved level of digitalization. This is an integral indicator that takes into account a number of objective parameters, such as the development of infrastructure, as well as the opinion and assessment of citizens regarding trust in digital public services, the level of involvement in the digitalization process, and people's perception of digital transformation. The main emphasis in the index was placed on how actively the state is represented by the internet and how the dialogue with population is built. Russia ranks 27th in the ranking of countries in terms of digitalization, followed by Japan and Estonia with 77 points in the ranking. As a result of applying the methodology, the index for our country was calculated, and it was 42 positions out of 100, which corresponds to the average level of readiness. Data October 2021. The objective indicators used in the calculation of the index are taken from open sources, World Bank, International Telecommunication Union, information on the official websites of the authorities of the respective state. Subject indicators are assessed based on the results of quantitative online surveys of social network users conducted by Dialogue. Obviously, clear methodologies with a transparent and logical system of indicators are needed, and it is especially important to ensure comparability, to build the relationship between the indices in order to exclude the situation of measurement and evaluation for the sake of measurement and evaluation. As the methods presented above have shown, the assessment of the digitalization of the social sphere and the spheres of human and household life are mandatory sections of the method, and they form a request for the quality of data sources for calculating and changing indicators.
Тема, которую поднимает следующий докладчик, Киреев Егор Юрьевич, она достаточно неожиданная не только для социологического познания, но и по тем вопросам, которые Егор Юрьевич поднимает, потому что вопросы «ничто не вечно под луной». Мы, конечно, с вами надеемся, что пандемия рано или поздно закончится, для этого делается много усилий. И вот вопрос о том, какое будет цифровое общество в постковидном состоянии, как будет реализовываться дальнейшие стратегии солидарности, как в этом отношении изменится миссия, прежде всего, социального университета. Это очень важный и глобальный вопрос, который сегодня необходимо ставить в условиях не только глобального мира, глобальных вызовов и в той ситуации, в которой мы оказались. Егор Юрьевич, пожалуйста, вам слово.
First of all, I want to say that I'm very pleased and I'm very excited to be a part of the International Social Congress this year as we're celebrating 30 years of our university. It was a long journey and maybe it's not so evident from right now, but I truly hope that we will have another 30 and even more years ahead of us. So I want to congratulate all of you with such a remarkable date. And now, please, let me switch to my presentation. As you can see, today I want to talk about digitalization, isolation and solidarity in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, on the mission of a social university in a post-COVID world. And I want to emphasize some kind of aspects of digitalization, isolation and solidarity. And I want to say that the COVID-19 pandemic and the accompanying quarantine restrictions imposed by governments of the most countries of the world, including Russia, completely captured the social life of society, in many ways determined the year of 2020 and now 2021. It's unlikely that such restrictions could have been imagined without an appropriate level of development of digital technologies and the online economy, which allowed partially and in some places completely to transfer the labor, educational and leisure activities of individuals and social groups into virtual online space, and to exercise digital control over potential violations of the self-isolation regime. It can be said that a person, social life, and his everyday life were seriously invaded by digital technologies, which were already ubiquitous in various serious spheres of social life before, but now have acquired even greater, in places dominant importance, which only brought the information of full-fledged digital society closer, transforming and redefining familiar social practices. The famous anthropologist Victor Turner, in English, and American anthropologist, a representative of symbolic anthropology popularized by the concept of liminality, the middle phase of transformation, when an individual, place, or a society is no longer what it used to be, but also not what it's going to become. And those who go through such liminal phases are neither here nor there. Instead, they oscillate between their old and new habits and values, moving towards a life whose form has yet to be determined. And thus, using the terminology of Victor Turner, we can conclude that a person and his or her social life, in anticipation of the end of the pandemic, are in a liminal state today, or using the terminology of Robert Department, proposed by him in the recent work The Upswing, How America Came Together a Century Ago and How We Can Do It Again, in the gap between isolation and solidarity, which it seems may be more difficult to overcome than the pandemic itself. And in fact, already in his work Bowling Alone, The Collapse of and Revival of American Community, Robert Department pointed to the general decline of social ties and weakening of social capital, noted the erosion of social cohesion and the weakening of social trust. Robert Department assigned a special role to social capital, which is the main condition for the organization of a mutual trust society. And social capital is understood as the connections between individuals, social networks, and the norms of reciprocity that flows from these networks. And one of the reasons for the decline in social capital is the technological transformation, in particular the technological transformation of leisure. And as you can see, leisure becomes distributed as the boundaries between work and rest are erased. The leisure time and in the context of isolation itself becomes algorithmized consumption, and optimization of the living space, remote control of the performed work, and control over life forms is carried out. The social time of people in self-isolation ceases to be normalized in such a way that it ceases to be divided into working and free, and the needs become round the clock and spontaneous and are provided by the new proletariat, which cannot afford the privilege of self-isolation. Leisure and work from home are often fraught with role conflicts, which makes it almost impossible for any kind of civic participation, narrowed the opportunities for expanding social contacts and self-development, directing people to sanctuary of social media. And if you can see on the slides, and the survey, which is called the Sociology of Pandemic, which is conducted by the Corona Form project, you can see that 61% of respondents are generally dissatisfied with remote work, 77% are dissatisfied with remote work among respondents with poor financial situation, 77% are dissatisfied with remote work among respondents living with 4 or more children, and 70% are dissatisfied with remote work among respondents aged 31 to 45 years. There are more respondents than before to do household chores. To a greater extent, the increase in household workload affected women. 36% of respondents noted that they became more tired of work, and 64% of respondents stopped dividing their time into working and the time of leisure. And I think that we might conclude that the new digital age begins with an attempt to free time in the first place. So isolation and remote work inevitably presupposes self-regulation, the practice of self-formation, which corresponds to cultural expectations associated with self-awareness, reflection, and taking responsibility for leadership and management of oneself and for improving one's life chances. So it supports an individualized personality in every possible way, marginalizing a person burdened with social ties. And in the era of the pandemic, self-isolation, it's actually irony of it, self-isolation is perceived as a form of solidarity, accessible to everyone, so the gap between isolation and solidarity ceases to exist for the duration of the pandemic. Isolation is solidarity now, which is provided by the new proletariat, which does not have such a privilege in the first place. So I want to quote researchers, the Andreas Hellerman and Julie Lees, who said that the coronavirus crisis needs a subject that is familiar to us from neoliberal everyday life, atomized, isolated, and left to itself. To a lesser extent, those who realize their social context without leaving their home in front of a computer monitor are at risk, and the source of risk is the one who realizes his or her social contacts without leaving his or her home in front of a computer monitor. And it is this neoliberal digital subject, as a rule a representative of middle class, that copes best with the new everyday life, not only during the pandemic, but also in general. And I want to show you some pictures. On the left one, you can see the representation of neoliberal digital subjects. So it's some kind of a monument to an ordering finger, so-called ordering finger. So this is a representative of middle class with a phone who want to order something online from the internet, etc. And on the right picture, you can see the monument to a carrier, so the new proletariat, which does not have the privilege of self-isolation and which we mostly rely on today. And also, dear colleagues, I want to talk about the problems of these digital times. For example, Francis Fukuyama, the famous researcher, the famous scientist, with his colleagues, in the article How to Save Democracy from Technology, Ending Big Tech Information Monopoly, published at the beginning of the year in the Foreign Affairs magazine, notes that among the many transformations taking place in the economy in the context of the pandemic, there is nothing more noticeable than the growth of the giant internet platforms such as Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Twitter, which were already powerful before the COVID-19 pandemic, and nowadays it became even stronger. The emergence of such dominant corporations should cause alarm, since they have dominant control over our communication, which in turn creates unique threats and risks. The main reason for Russian adults to go online have been consistently for many years associated with communication and participation in social media. In 2019, 76.7% of the population aged 15 to 74 years were involved in social media. If before the pandemic digital technologies were considered as one of the possible instrumental solutions that complement physical reality, then in 2020-2021 they actually became an alternative reality, into which many everyday routine tasks passed. And we must talk about forced digitalization even. It has most noticeably affected the consumption of information and entertainment content, such as games, movies, TV shows, music, interpersonal communication, and the use, of course, of educational services. And the massive transfer of social interactions, educational, leisure practices, trade, politics, from the real world to the virtual world has led to the fact that people are looking for solidarity and camaraderie on the internet, an environment that is determined not by cohesion but by enemy and by alienation. Instead of participating in public organization that can provide a sense of community as well as practical experience of tolerance and consensus building, people join internet mobs in which they immerse themselves in the logics of the crowds by clicking like, putting likes and leaving comments or share and then moving on. And instead of going to real public square, they anonymously move to digital spaces, where due to the actions of filter bubbles, they rarely meet with opponents, and when such a meeting occurs, it becomes a new reason for confrontation more often. And instead of the procedural rules that guide real communication between individuals, the internet environment uses algorithms designed to attract attention, collect data, and sell advertising. At the same time, the logic of social media is arranged in such a way that the voices of the most angry, most emotional, odious, divisive opinion leaders are amplified, but instead reasonable, rational, and balanced positions are much more difficult to here. All this leads to the fact that radicalization and polarization spread now very, very quickly. Dear colleagues, the well-known American sociologist Sherry Turkle expresses fears that once it is possible to interact face-to-face, we will find ourselves gravitating towards the frictionless options with which we've grown comfortable during these times of isolation and during these times of COVID-19 pandemic. And we can draw some conclusions from here. So the resources of social communication provided by the emerging information society, amplified by the pandemic, and accompanied by virtualization of social life, have a serious, potentially destabilizing, as well as repressive potential in relation to those forms of communication that do not fit into their format and create serious risks to social cohesion. It seems necessary to develop new theoretical and practical initiatives that contribute to the preservation of humanistically oriented social communication. In this regard, it is necessary to reassemble social media, create and strengthen platforms for interaction and restore social ties, create new norms that are more humane and more proportionate to our lives. It seems that in order to increase the level of social cohesion, the system of human relationships, family, friendly, collegial, which are bases of solidarity, should be based on the logic of caring, as an opportunity to understand the other as an active empathy. And the processes of digitalization and technology development put before social scientists the need for a critical and comprehensive understanding of the social consequences of such developments. And now I want to talk a few words about the mission of social university in the post-COVID world. And of course, dear colleagues, you know that digitalization of the education system with a number of advantages leads rather to the loss of the creative and critical component of the university education, replacing it with standardized educational practices. We can see that universities nowadays in the 21st century are most like, looks like online factories in some sorts, all for the sake of achieving goals. Quality is slowly but surely becoming less important than quantity in the process of economic growth, audience share, and the number of publications. Everyday use of gadgets devalues universities as the places where individual actions once took place, leaving only the cultural memory of the spaces. Students and teachers can use gadgets to move from home to university and back, simultaneously being present in several places, or rather not being present anywhere, while only listening, intensifying interpersonal and interrole conflicts. These changes displace places where certain actions once took place. The unique atmosphere and spiritual energy of the university evaporates as soon as they are replaced by virtual education environments and Skype or Zoom classes. And even such peripheral spaces, the third places, according to Richard Oldenburg, for example, like university libraries and auditoriums, are also losing their former importance. And of course, dear colleagues, you know that a known place, it's a concept of French anthropologist Marc Auger. It's called like known place. It do not confer to a feeling of place. There is no there in known place, in direct contrast to places which we tend to think of as being relational, historical, and concerned with identity. Non-places are designed and intended for the frictionless passage of nameless and faceless multitudes. And in my opinion, universities fundamentally facing four risks nowadays. The first one is, in my opinion, robotization of social communication, or as Sherry Turkle, American sociologist, put it, frictionless communication. The second one is continuing alienation of teachers from students and teachers from teachers. The third one is precarization of faculty. You of course know that non-optimized imposed technologies and control make the teachers' work more stressful, more exhausting, and of course it's a risk of becoming, for universities, of just becoming a non-place. And you can put it in a formula: robotization plus alienation plus precarization. It means a non-place. And I always ask my students if you can equally choose between massive online courses in our university and, for example, in Harvard University, what your choice would be. And of course, dear colleagues, you know the answer. In my opinion, each university is a unique community of students and faculty, and the main question in the post-COVID times is how to preserve it. The famous researcher, American researcher of academia, Brian Alexander, in the midst of the pandemic in 2020 released a very interesting book, which is called Academia Next, The Futures of Higher Education. In this book, he tries to project different models of how university systems, how the system of higher education might be developing in the future. And he drew a picture, you can put it on the continuum from retro campus, some kind of retro model, which is less digitalized, more like universities of 20th century or 19th century even, and augmented university, augmented campus, which is like more digitalized university of 21st century and beyond. In my opinion, the social university is in the future supposed to be more like moderate retro university, physically resembles the late 20th century university campus. In such university, students, faculty and staff less likely to be seen using smartphones or tablets, they would be off campus. Faculty and staff encourage students to take advantage of these offline practices. Students interact with each other and with other members of the community mostly offline, both academic and local. A core teaching practice is an offline seminar discussions. In contrary to teaching practices and communication, university bureaucracy is fully digitalized, of course. And university resources, for example, such like university libraries and etc., they're both available online and offline. So it's like combination of digital practices and offline practices with the emphasis on offline practices in process of education. It's very important in my opinion. And to conclude, all has been said, it appears to me that the mission of a true social university is to be a moderate retro university, as Brian Alexander put it, a safe space, not a known place, in a forcibly digitalized post-COVID world. It's a mission to preserve of humanistically oriented social communication, by being the platform for interaction and for formation of social ties, by preserving and cherishing the unique community of students and faculty, by providing the logic of caring, by supporting the volunteer organizations, by becoming an intellectual and rallying center of the community with lifelong learning practices, and by development of critical thinking and comprehensive research of social aspects of digitalization. Of course, you can see that we might move on these pictures. We might move from this frictionless, digitalized university to a more social one, with humanistically oriented social communication, of course. And that is going to be my presentation. I want to thank all of you for the attention, and if there are some questions, of course, I would be very pleased to answer them even by email or Skype or other sources of communication. So, thank you very much.
Ну что ж, мы верим искренне, что миссия социального университета будущего, конечно, столь велика, как обозначил наш уважаемый докладчик. А мы продолжаем двигаться дальше. Следующий доклад прозвучит из уст доктора исторических наук, профессора факультета социальной работы нашего университета Демидовой Татьяны Евгеньевны. Ее доклад «Цифровизация социальной сферы в контексте моральных ценностей». Пожалуйста, Татьяна Евгеньевна, просим вас.
Dear colleagues, my name is Demidova Tatiana. I am PhD in history, professor of the Faculty of Social Work of the Russian State Social University. I want to discuss a very important to my mind theme. The theme of my report is digital processes in the context of social and moral values. I would like to discuss an ethical assessment of the digital processes. Digital process has generated new social values. Currently, they are more connected with thinking and consciousness than with the physical sphere. The materialistic values of the past era are being replaced by values derived from ability to receive and possess information. Erich Fromm, in his book To Have or To Be, wrote, "Modern values are shifting from having something physically to being someone psychologically and spiritually. Thus, a new conceptualization of humanity is needed in the information society." Modern researchers suggest calling a representative of such a society an information man. The information man has a new moral vision. If an economic man was busy solving problems of material nature, the information man solves issues related to the acquisition, storage, and distribution of information, and the decision he makes potentially carry ethical consequences. Humanity always has had several main goals, the achievements of which is connected with information. These goals are wealth, security, entertainment, and control. In the information society, making a profit is associated with the possession of necessary information. The elite of society who owned material values is replaced by a new elite with informational resources. Security means survival in a hostile and unknown world. Information is used to combat uncertainty. The risk in decision-making is reduced through the use of knowledge and information technologies. A lot of information technologies are also associated with entertainment and spending free time. The so-called information entertainment industry has become a significant factor in the economy of many countries. Control is an equally important need of people. Humanity is looking for ways to control events to make our life better. Modern information systems allow the state to control the vital activity of citizens, fight terrorism and crime, monitor social, economic, and political processes. However, today, an urgent issue is to determine the permissible limits of such control over a person. In general, it should be noted that with the development of science and information, the speed of social and industrial processes also increases, giving rise to a whole series of problems and unforeseen circumstances in various fields. An important ethical problem is the digitization of the social system. Society is changing under the influence of informational technologies, but we are to ask ourselves, do new information technologies improve life? Is humanity becoming spiritually richer, or does it feel deprived and exhausted by consuming more and more? Currently in Russia, the social support system is undergoing a revolutionary reform. A unified social support system is being created for all regions. For the first time, individual services will be provided automatically. But the people most in need of social assistance very often don't have digital competences, and many of them have disabilities. They may require special services and alternative access to services. The digitalization of social sphere can both simplify the provision of assistance and create new ways of discrimination. A lot depends on the ethical principles underlying the social support system. There are two approaches for solving this problem. Proponents of the first approach believe that the introduction of new technologies is an integral part of progress. New technologies should be introduced regardless of the impact they have on people's work and life. According to this approach, ethical values are an obstacle for the development and implementation of the latest technologies. Such an opinion is widespread in the modern society. So they are not those who lead to the fact of introducing new information technologies. They don't think about the quality of life and the effect of the information technologies on the health of people. Proponents of the other side argue that improving the quality of life should dominate technological progress. It is necessary to avoid technologies that lead to social upheaval, unemployment associated with technological innovation. From the perspective of this approach, the success of information technologies, no matter how technically perfect they are, depend on how well they meet the needs of the people for whom they are invented. Herbert Marcuse's phrase is well known: society rushes into the new world of technology only to find emptiness there. We are maniac consumers who know the price of everything but do not appreciate anything. According to representatives of this approach, technology is considered as a tool used to achieve a goal and doesn't carry any ethical burden. As a result, human needs became insignificant when developing new information technologies. Ethical problems in the societies with a market economy are often not given enough attention, and this affects, first of all, people's mental health. As a result, the level of neurotic diseases increases, interest in religion and mysticism is growing up. However, in recent years, the situation has begun to change. The more harm new information technologies cause, the more scientific research and public discussions appear on how to avoid the negative consequence of digital processes. They are based on an ethical assessment of possible risks and the consolidation of its results in the norms of law. So let's hope for the best. We believe that the practice of introducing new technologies should be discussed and controlled by the representatives of science and, of course, by the society. Thank you for your information.
Мне очень приятно представить слово следующему выступающему. Это наша выпускница аспирантуры РГСУ, которая сегодня является доцентом факультета русского языка и литературы Северо-Западного педагогического университета КНР, госпожа Ван Хаянь. И тема, которую она поднимает, она сегодня очень важна. С одной стороны, это академические контакты и особенность реализации академических контактов в условиях пандемии. Они не только не прекращаются, но и в этих контактах появляется новый вектор развития между нашими странами, между нашими университетами. Я попросил бы госпожу Ван Хаянь поделиться своим видением тех проблем, которые сегодня складываются между нашими странами и университетами. Пожалуйста.
Уважаемые коллеги, здравствуйте. Тема моего доклада «Академическая мобильность между Китаем и Россией. Вызовы и перспективы». Она посвящена актуальной проблеме академических контактов в условиях пандемии, то есть в условиях серьезного ограничения на передвижение как преподавателей, так и студентов. Из-за такого рода ограничений оказалась под вопросом традиционная схема студенческого обмена и связана с ней реализация образовательных программ. Насколько важен обмен для развития профессиональных компетенций учащихся, можно увидеть на примере обмена студентов языковых специальностей. Без контактов с носителями иного языка и культуры учащимся невозможно полноценно освоить семантические обороты, нюансы синтаксиса и другие навыки общения. Именно поэтому до пандемии между Китаем и Россией происходил обмен тысяч студентов языковых специальностей. А планирование вузов и профильных государственных структур наших стран было нацелено на дальнейшее расширение таких академических контактов. На всю эту конструкцию было оказано негативное воздействие в период 2019-2021 годов. В другое время такая неблагоприятная ситуация стала бы серьезным ударом по университетскому образованию. Однако сейчас у данной проблемы есть перспективное решение. Оно связано с тем, что переход мирового сообщества на информационную стадию своего развития открывает новые уровни коммуникаций. Поэтому пандемия не стала препятствием для развития академических контактов. Наоборот, стимулировала их развитие в новых формах. Конкретным примером российско-китайских академических контактов такого рода может послужить развитие связей между Северо-Западным педагогическим университетом Китайской Народной Республики, преподавателем которого я являюсь, и Российским государственным социальным университетом. По совместной договоренности факультета русского языка нашего университета и гуманитарного факультета РГСУ была организована целая серия видеоконференций с использованием поисковых сервисов Яндекс. Перед китайскими студентами, изучающимися русский язык и культуру, открылась виртуальная Россия. Они путешествовали по виртуальным городам, улицам, изучали виртуальные памятники и в формате онлайн общались с российскими преподавателями и своими сверстниками. Отдельно отметим явный плюс такого рода формата академического контакта. Если его традиционная форма не могла быть массовой, так как требовала больших финансовых затрат, транспортных расходов, расходов на проживание, питание и так далее, то теперь возникает возможность вовлечения в академические контакты максимального количества студенческой молодежи. Вне всякого сомнения, пандемия рано или поздно будет побеждена, и традиционная форма академических контактов вернется. Однако выстраивание и функционирование виртуальной формы академических контактов, которая происходит в настоящее время, вне сомнения, указывает нам на новый тренд эффективного университетского образования. Спасибо за внимание.
Я благодарю нашу китайскую коллегу за прекрасно очерченные вызовы и перспективы развития российско-китайских контактов в условиях пандемии и дальнейшего развития наших стран. И мне очень приятно уже к финалу пленарного заседания предоставить слово команде наших достаточно молодых и очень перспективных российских ученых. Это команда Ганшина Владимира Константиновича, Метваль Алисы Олеговны, которые доложат нам о технологиях работы, IT-технологиях, виртуальных технологиях, в подготовке специалистов в работе с неблагополучными семьями. Эта разработка касается сферы социальной работы, и она является по-своему пионерской в этой сфере. Пожалуйста, мы слушаем.
Hello, my name is Vladimir Ganshin.
And my name is Alisa Mitvel, and we are working for the Project Center Technopark of the Russian Social State University, and we prepared a report on the topic of development of VR applications for training specialists from the social sphere, and I'm going to be presenting it for the both of us. The topic of our report is connected to the VR technology, and it's been very promising for the past couple of years even though nevertheless it's facing leaps and bounds. Some of the difficulties that the industry is facing today is, first of all, the troubles with user experience, bulky hardware, glitches, and as well as the lack of offered content. Among many other benefits of VR usage is the advantages, I would say. So the ability to provide information in real time, the ability to facilitate training and mirroring real life experiences, and it enables remote workforce. The ultimate direction we're moving towards is the new version of the internet, the digital twin of our reality, the metaverse, and this term gained recently a lot of attention in the media, both from the wide audience and as well as from the big companies such as Epic Games, Microsoft, Facebook, among others. The metaverse is going to encompass commerce, education, community fostering, and economy. It is a constant virtual space, decentralized, offering limitless possibilities in terms of creativity and community creation. The VR hardware and software development is key to in developing the metaverse itself. So today we try to think about the best options that are available on the market today in terms of VR headsets, software for VR itself and for 3D modeling, and we made optimal decision-making matrices to define the leaders in the industry as for today. In terms of VR headsets, we compared the ones that are available on the market, and the main ones, we would say so, it's HTC Vive, Google Cardboard, and Oculus Quest 2. The parameters that we observed, the criterias for the VR headsets, is the price, because they can be very financially heavy for common users, the entry threshold for new users, functionality, complexity of development, and technical characteristics. The best solution via functionality is HTC Vive. It offers excellent graphics, but it's very pricey. It's not that mobile because of all the different parts of the headset itself. Google Cardboard lacks in the graphics, and Oculus Quest, if comparing all the criteria, is leading in that regard. When we compared the software for VR, the two softwares that are mainly used today are Unity and Unreal Engine. The criteria that we compared by was community, entry threshold for new users, functionality, complexity of development, and the platform of the software. What we observed from our comparison is that C#, that Unity is functioning on C# and it is open to way more users comparing to Unreal Engine that is on C++, which is not that widely known as C#. And the 3D software, we compared Blender and Autodesk software. Autodesk software has a different software for different needs that the user might have. As Blender, it's free, but it has a lot of different functions, and it operates on open code. It is not that well optimized, so considering the benefits of Blender, still Autodesk is winning on that matter. One of the most prominent spheres for VR/AR is training for the workforce, and at the Russian Social State University we try to find digital solutions for the social field, and we came up with the idea of virtual reality simulator for social worker that we developed at the Project Center Technopark. We thought about this product as of a virtual environment for training future social workers to work with disadvantaged families. And the environment itself is the place of residence of the family, and through which the trainee can move, interact with objects and character. It can have a training mode, learning mode, and it has an exam mode that people can be tested upon their skills in the social field. We came up with this decision because learning in virtual reality allows you to learn by doing, by experiencing the situation itself. The student is immersed in a world that is simulating the real life. Learning through experience is one of the most effective ways to learn. In training communication skills, it is important to experience the fullness of the experience, and VR allows such conditions with a high degree of reliability, practicing human behavior for real situations. VR is a promising field for many industries. It has already proven its effectiveness in training and can be used for training in a social sphere. After conducting research, we can make an assumption that in terms of headsets, the best option that we have today is Oculus Quest 2. In terms of VR software is Unity, and in terms of 3D software is Autodesk, especially it can be Maya. The ultimate solution as we see it is when the metaverse is going to be developed. It can be possible that in the metaverse there could be places where people can go through trainings, for example, as with the social workers, or any other skill that requires experiencing it beforehand in the simulated reality, or for which the experience is crucially needed. And ultimately, I believe that we could be able to come up with such decisions for the metaverse space with training centers. That would be all that we wanted to tell you today. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Ну, вот, Михаил Васильевич, посмотрите, какие перспективы в социальной сфере открываются в связи с тем, о чем докладывала Алиса Олеговна. Да, вот возможность тренажера, виртуального тренажера, когда мы будущего социального работника можем обучить через такую игровую виртуальную форму работы с клиентом, мне кажется, особенно важно в тех проектах, которые связаны с работой с очень трудными клиентами социальной сферы. Это люди с психическими нарушениями, это люди, которые являются очень капризными клиентами и так далее. Мне кажется, это очень важно, и в условиях пандемии мы знаем, что во всем мире количество таких людей растет. Однако наше пленарное заседание подходит к финалу. Как вы думаете, у нас впереди второй день. Завтра мы работаем по секциям. У нас громадное количество очень интересных докладчиков. Секции начинают у нас работать с 10 утра и до 9 вечера. Они работают последовательно, программа вся обозначена. Конгресс идет на английском и русском языке. Значит, все подключиться также могут в Zoom, послушать наш конгресс, задать вопросы докладчикам. Ну, как вы думаете, мы, подводя итог вот всему тому материалу, который мы сегодня прослушали, докладчиков из разных стран, какой главный, может быть, вывод мы с вами должны сделать?
Ну, наверное, достаточно сложно сказать, какой главный вывод мы должны сделать, потому что, если посмотреть на те доклады, которые сегодня прозвучали, мы видим, что проблема цифровизации – это глобальные проблемы, которые волнуют ведущие университеты мира. А сегодня у нас выступали представители не только европейского континента, и Азиатско-Тихоокеанского региона, и Северной Америки, и, по сути это дело, и европейского континента, и европейской части Европы. То есть, по сути дела, мы с вами видим, что эта проблема, она действительно сегодня не только тревожит, но и становится частью, скажем, не только учебного процесса, частью социализации современного человека, частью жизненного сценария человека. И мы говорим о том, что это та реальность, это та действительность, в которой мы сегодня с вами находимся. И тот самый факт, что мы сегодня сумели объединить людей с разных континентов, с разных стран, разных университетов в сжатые сроки, в сжатом пространстве, на единой площадке Российского государственного социального университета на сегодняшний день, говорит, наверное, только о том, что жизнь действительно меняется вектор измерения этой жизни. И думается, что эта тема не только актуальна, но и она заставляет нас переформатировать и наше мышление, и наши подходы, и наше взаимодействие, и наши выступления. Всем огромное спасибо за участие в конференции. Спасибо.
Ну и по традиции звучит гимн Российского государственного социального университета.
Нет в мире, наверное, места,
где было бы нам интересней.
Со всех уголков континентов съезжаются наши студенты.
Юристы, юнцы, программисты, экологи, экономисты,
спортсмены, врачи и лингвисты, а также певцы и артисты.
Наш дом — это сила науки, наш дом, где нам всем не до скуки. РГСУ — это место, где все мы счастливы вместе. Наш дом — это сила науки, наш дом, где нам всем не до скуки. Двери откроет с любовью РГСУ нам с тобою.
Ответит любой без сомнения, что нужно студенту терпения.
Побольше читать, заниматься, с друзьями, конечно, встречаться.
Наш вуз все мечты исполняет, путь к знаниям он открывает. Послушайте, разве не чудо, что съехались мы отовсюду? Наш дом — это сила науки, наш дом, где нам всем не до скуки. РГСУ — это место, где все мы счастливы вместе. Наш дом — это сила науки, наш дом, где нам всем не до скуки. Двери откроет с любовью РГСУ нам с тобою.
Если ты молод, активен и весел, вместе нам будет еще интересней. Преподаватели наши друзья,
РГСУ как большая семья.
Ярче, чем звезды горят в небесах, видят мечту и творят чудеса. Разные люди с огромной земли.
Все мы студенты, и ты приходи. Наш дом — это сила науки, наш дом, где нам всем не до скуки. Двери откроет с любовью РГСУ. Наш дом — это сила науки, наш дом, где нам всем не до скуки. Двери
тобою. Наш дом — это сила науки, наш дом, где нам всем не до скуки. РГСУ — это место, где все мы счастливы вместе.
Тема, с которой выступила Галина Юрьевна, это очень актуальная тема. Как мы видим, что современный вуз, он не может не работать в рамках и стандартах, прежде всего, цифровой политики, цифрового обучения. И эта тематика, она достаточно широко сегодня распространена во всем мире. Ну, скажем, тот доклад, который прозвучит сегодня, к этой липке из Канады, страна огромная, с большими экономическими возможностями, с большой территорией, как Российская Федерация. Поэтому, конечно же, эта тематика актуальна не только для Российской Федерации, для нашего вуза, но в том числе и для вузов, которые ведут образование на территории Канады.
Но прежде чем объявить этот доклад, я хочу обратить внимание, что цифровизация образования в области социальной работы, о которой будет говорить докладчик, она принципиально важна для России.
Ну да, тем более, когда, если мы с вами смотрим на сегодняшний день, вот это вот подход на цифровизацию социальной сферы, которая была обозначена президентом, которая была обозначена в ближайших документах Министерства социальной защиты, она сегодня как раз вот эту тему делает актуальную для нашей страны. Я думаю, что опыт, который получен в Канаде, он в какой-то мере пригодится и для Российской Федерации.
Значит, к этой липке опросим.
Hi, my name is Kathy Lipke. I'm a faculty instructor in the social work program at Douglas College, which is in Coquitlam in Canada. And today I'm going to talk about the digitalization of social work education in Canada. So I want to start by talking about March 2020, sort of the beginning of the pandemic in Canada. At this time, there were starting to be public health orders related to students and people being in groups and trying to figure out how we could to try to reduce the spread of COVID-19. And there were conversations that were happening at the presidential level between all of the post-secondary institutions in British Columbia. And the decision was made that college and classes were going to be moving to a remote delivery. I was given about an hour's notice before class was to start that day that we were no longer meeting in person and that I would have to move my content online. So this was a time that, that I didn't teach remotely, and so I didn't have access to Zoom or some of the other video chats that we have now. And so at that time, I put my content onto Blackboard, which is the format that we use at my college, and I'll show you that now. So Blackboard is the education platform that we use at my school, at Douglas College. Each post-secondary institution is able to choose their own platform. There is a law in Canada that, for privacy reasons, that content and any digital platform that's used by a school in Canada has to have its data stored inside of Canada. And so that's the main rule when schools are deciding which platform they're going to use. So my school purchased Blackboard as well, has a license for Zoom, so we are allowed to use Zoom as well. And within Blackboard, there's also a video recording feature as well, which is called Collaborate Ultra, that will allow us to also have meetings with students using video chat. So Blackboard allows me to upload content like videos and articles for the students to see. The students can also communicate with the teacher, and they can also communicate with each other using an email type feature within Blackboard. There's also the built-in feature, like I mentioned, about for video calls that's similar to Zoom, although we are also allowed to use Zoom if we prefer. So basically I would add a link to Blackboard, and my students would access it, and that would bring us to the video chat for class. So this is another example of Blackboard. So this is just an example of week 2 for my social welfare course. And so you see I'm able to upload a YouTube video, and I'm able to upload my PowerPoint slides so that the students can follow along. Another great feature about Blackboard is that students can actually write tests and quizzes within Blackboard, and it will mark them directly for me and upload their grades directly into to the grading, publish their grades basically directly into Blackboard so that the students can see their grades immediately and I don't have to do the marking by hand. Fast forward to September 2021. So we are now, this is the first semester that we've offered at my school in person. And so it's very nice to be in person. And I think the students are grateful to be in person as well. I think that they enjoyed the work-life balance of being able to do class from online. But I know that there were some challenges related to students feeling isolated and feeling like it was difficult for them to concentrate online as opposed to being live in a class. And I know that as a teacher, it's easier to manage the classroom dynamics when we're in class for sure, and to make sure that students are understanding the concepts that we're talking about and I'm seeing them every day. So the public health order set by the province is that students and the teacher must be wearing a mask at all times. We discourage students from eating in class so that they keep their masks on. I am allowed to take my mask off if I am lecturing at the front of the class and I am 6 feet away from the students. And so this helps with access. If students can see my face and my mouth, it helps them to understand what I'm saying. And so it's important for me as a teacher to be able to remove my mask when I'm teaching, as long as I am distanced from the students. So I wanted to also talk about the digitalization of the field of social work. So since the pandemic, many services have moved into online formats, remote formats, and they continue to be in remote formats. So I think it's easier to see more people when you are doing phone calls or you're making Zoom calls with clients as opposed to driving to somebody to see them and or having somebody come into your office. From a client perspective, it's easy to access services and support from home. If you don't have transportation or if it's difficult for you to get to places, this is easier. One of the problems is that sometimes people don't have access or consistent access to phones or computers. Some of our clients are vulnerable people who may be of low income, who don't have access to these services, and so that could create a challenge for them to access services if they're not able to call or use a computer. And I think also what I've heard from the clients is that they miss the connection of seeing a social worker and being with somebody live as well. From a social work perspective, it can be difficult to assess somebody remotely as opposed to sitting in front of somebody. You get a sense of how they're doing. And so when you are talking with somebody on the phone or seeing somebody through the computer, it can be difficult to get a sense of how they're doing or if there's changes in how they're doing. Some social workers have different levels of comfort with technology. Some people are not comfortable with it, and so that is a challenge for some. And then also confidentiality concerns. So if I am making phone calls from my home, do I have other people here that could overhear? If I'm trying to talk to a client and they're at their home, do they have other people around that they're not able to speak freely about? So some of the confidentiality concerns as well. Do I record my sessions? Do I keep that on my home computer? How do you navigate some of those confidentiality that you want to protect, that you want to protect your client? And so that concludes my presentation about the digitalization of social work in Canada. And I want to thank you.
Тему, которую поднял Кэти Литке, продолжит доктор физико-математических наук, профессор нашего университета Краснов Андрей Евгеньевич, поскольку проблемы, связанные с информационными технологиями, коммуникационными технологиями, они сегодня проникают во все сферы жизнедеятельности человека, во все профессии. И здесь, наверное, такой вот методологический дискурс, представление о том, как вот это информационное пространство сегодня охватывает различные области познания, различные науки. И думается, что вот эта тема, которая сегодня прозвучит на Конгрессе, даст, скажем, направление для размышления для многих профессий. Пожалуйста, Андрей Евгеньевич.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, we present to your attention a report on the topic Information and Telecommunication Technologies and their Comprehensive Evaluation. My colleagues are actively involved in the study of methods for meta-description of complex technical, information and communication and educational systems. And today's report is a special case of the approach we are developing but for information and communication technologies. The purpose of the report is substantiation of the method for calculating indices that integrally describe the development of information and communication technologies. The main tasks are, firstly, show the disadvantages of existing methods for calculating indices, and secondly, to propose a substantially effective method for calculating indices which has shown high efficiency in industrial quality control tasks. For the integral description of complex systems, various indices are widely used, the totality of which is a kind of meta-description of systems. For example, international rankings or indices serve as a tools for assessing the development of information and communication technologies, ICT. Below are the main tools. Ict Development Index, a combined indicator characterizing the achievements of the countries of the world in terms of the development of information and communication technologies. For example, according to the International Telecommunication Union, from 2017, Russia has a 45 rating on the Ict Development Index. 11 basic indicators are used to complete Ict Development Indices. All indicators are divided into 3 groups, according to which 3 sub-indexes are formed. Then these 3 sub-indexes are combined into one integral index. At this point, attention should be paid to the following paradox. Many government organizations, international organizations, United Nations, entities, and the world's leading banks are involved in collecting information for the formation of Ict Development Index. However, never is a scientifically based approach to calculating indices. Everyone is satisfied with the weighted average. How an index is calculated? According to the International Telecommunication Union, first, each sub-index is calculated as the sum of the weighted basic indicators. Then, the Ict Development Index is calculated as the sum of the 3 weighted sub-indexes. However, from the point of view of the theory of making plausible decisions, this is completely wrong. The procedure for forming an integral index is like deciding by a team of neurons. Therefore, a simple weighted summation is wrong neither from the standpoint of a nonlinear neural network algorithm nor from the standpoint of decision theory. Using average tends to degenerate the meta description of the data. Let's take a look at a simple example from the field of education. Two students get different grades, 3, 5, and 4, 4. In total, they scored 8 points. At the same time, 0.44 is closer to 0.55 of the ideal estimates. Another illustrative example is shown in the table where 9 students received grades in 3 subjects. Grades 5.44 and 5.53 give the same amount of 13 points, and grades 4.44 and 5.43 also give the same amounts of 12 points. And only correct nonlinear estimation removes degeneracy of evaluating. A plausible estimation of the subindex based on indicators and their maximum criterion values is given by this formula. The graph shows the dependence of the reliability of the evaluation of the subindex on the number of indicators. The reliability of more than 90% is achieved on a sample of 10 indicators. It follows that the subindices of the ICT index have little confidence, 87 and 80% only. In the above box, plausible and neuropodic methods for evaluating integral indicators based on numerous indicators are presented, and not only theoretical but also implemented in industry and education. In conclusion, we note the following. The boom over the past decade in the formation of numerous indices, both in the economy and in the field of information and communication technologies, is associated with economic and technical intelligence. The formation of initial ICT indicators is undoubtedly an important task. Along with this, it is necessary to move from fast but inaccurate and degenerate methods of evaluating integral indexes of development to more accurate nonlinear methods. We invite you to cooperation. Thank you for the attention. Here is the email address for communication.
Ну, рассказ Андрея Евгеньевича мне очень понравился. И мне показалось, что то, как он сделал акценты в этой проблеме, это очень важно для нашего дальнейшего развития, поскольку в теме нашего Конгресса все-таки звучит миссия университета будущего, социального университета будущего. Ну а я с удовольствием предоставлю слово представителю Кореи. И это представитель Кореи международной организации, это председатель правления Международного образовательного фонда Чонджу, Корея, Брайан Парк. Речь идет о структурировании исследований ГАИ. Пожалуйста, Брайан Парк.
Thank you for your introduction. I am Brian Park from Korea. So today's topic is the framework related to Kaya studies, Kaya X. I hope that 21st International Congress of the Social Science is successful. Today's topic is the framework related to Kaya X studies. The core researcher is just Brian Park and Domyoung and Jiwon and Min-Soo Kim and Danny Park. Kaya was the ancient country located in Han Peninsula from the AD 48 to 562, and Kaya is associated with the beginning of Buddhism in Korea. It was a country with excellent iron and earthware culture and played a role in delivering excellent culture to ancient Japan. Also, it was important meaning in this ancient history of Korea and an ancient history of East. Research has been lacking so far. Kaya is closely related to history of Japan and played a role in classifying the correct history of two countries. You can see this is location of Kaya. There are small map. You can see that is here, and then there's the figures in the site here. Yeah, in the Gyeongsang province to Jeolla province is belong to the Kaya. And then the history of the Kaya is according to the Samyung Yusa, the ancient history of the Book of Korea in 1848 to 80 Hwang-ok, the princess of Ayuda ancestor India met King Suro in Kaya. As a result, Kaya has a fusion of Korean culture and Indian culture. Hwang-ok brought Buddhism from India, and then the trace of that Buddhism remained in the Wanggusa and then this Chilburam temples in Korea. So next slide is that you can not clearly, but it's a very big displays in this Kaya X. The 6 category, 1, 2, 6, 6 category, and the 4, 4, 7 kind of the displays, very big displays here. This is independent academic sources that are located here, and then this is very close to the Kaya Buddhism. And how to develop the Kaya X as Kaya studies is Kaya X is divided into the 6 category, and it consists of a total of 4.7 disciplines. The step is from experience and recognize of value and getting the fact and then this information and the knowledge and theory and displays. The naming Kaya is the Kaya studies, Kaya X in English. There are several academic names including ICS, but it's common to add this ICS to academic groups with a complex characteristic. It's important. The rationale can be found in mathematics and economics and physics. The definition of Kaya is after this development of science, the most basic thing is to define, justify. The definition of a Kaya X is, I can explain about kind of this definition. The widest sense is the logical and then the objective system of knowledge about, and including the regional element of Kaya in southern part of Korean Peninsula and cultural elements such as religion and tea and earthware and iron culture in Kaya. In summarize, Kaya is the logical and objective knowledge system that has contained knowledge about Kaya. The category of Kaya X is divided into 6 kinds of philosophy, and then there's humanities and social science, natural science, and artistic categories. Compared with the other disciplines, this philosophy category are treated as separate from the humanities category. In this philosophical category, the semantics Kaya, the theory of value of Kaya, and then this ontologies of Kaya. the most important thing is what is meaning of the Gaia, what is the value of the religion, and what is product value does the Gaia existence have, what is the logic by the Gaia, and what is logic in relation to Gaia, what kind of this logic does an academic structure and Gaia X have. This question served as basic element of philosophy. Humanist category. Gaia is the analysis theory, Gaia religion theory, Gaia cultural theory, Gaia is a collection theory, and Gaia folklore, and it's the humanities Gaia theory, and Gaia religion theory, etc. And there is 191 sub-disciplines. Gaia analysis studies the analysis Gaia by dividing it into the people, research field, religion, and analytics. Gaia's leadership theory is a theory that try to grasp the characteristic of Gaia by analyzing the relationship with the area and then this event related to Gaia, and etc. And then social science categories is representative with Gaia sociology, Gaia education, etc. It is they also play this key role, and then this base of them there is 77 disciplines belonging. And natural science category, it is there are many fields of the study in agriculture, but the Gaia's Iron Age theory, Gaia's tea theory is that belong to natural science. Nowadays, you can see the Jangun tea theory in natural science, and there are 67 sub-disciplines. The artistic category, Gaia's culture and this art theory, there's earthware theory, and then there's ancient song theory plays the root role in this category. Based on that, there is 26 sub-disciplines in its field created by researching world that can be confirmed today. The last is convergence category. It is a cross disciplines. It is academic field created by conversion with this material of Gaia X. From the modern point of view, the source of Gaia knowledge has undergone the future process with other disciplines. The per study, Gaia X has a value as a regional study, and at the same time, this presents academic basis of the methodologies and developing the new categories and academic field. It is hoped that through this presentation, various academic development work in this field of social science will be carried out. Academic development will be play a role in creating this foundation for creating new systemic knowledge and creating educational methodologies can be surpassed in the future generations. Thank you. And the next speaker is will be the co-researcher Tomyang, the Korean Buddhist monk, and he will talking about the relationship between the Gaia X and Gaia Buddhism. Please.
Hi, nice to meet you. I am Korean monk Tomyang. I will say the Gaia 6 and Gaia Buddhism. The structure of Gaia 6 lays the basis for the argument about Gaia in various aspects. Gaia has a history from 1980 to 1439, so it is difficult to prove on a clear historical basis. In this case, it has been attempted to prove with multiple evidence so far, but it was difficult to determine when there was an argument from the opposite side. The structure of Gaia is philosophical, humanistic, social science, and artistic. Since the research result in the convergence academic category attempt to prove one historical fact, it can have stronger evidence. Among them, Gaia Buddhism was proved in the history of the three kingdoms, and there was a Pasa stone pagoda as a relic, but there was a group of researchers who demanded a stronger basis. The structure of Gaia 6 will be subdivided and proven in various fields to facilitate the verification of the substance of Buddhism. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And next speaker is Dr. Min-Soo Kim. He will approach to the educational aspect to the Kaya X. Please, Dr. Kim.
I'm Min-Soo Kim, introduced by Professor Park. Today, I will give a presentation on how to connect the structure of Kaya X to education. Look at the PPT. This material is intended to educate middle school students, including Korea. The value of Kaya X should be educated from a historical perspective. The goal is an accurate understanding of Korean and Eastern history. Recently, the United Nations UNESCO designated the historic site of Gaya as a cultural heritage. Middle school students should know why it should be a cultural heritage site. Next, we will teach the understanding of 6 fields of specific Kaya X. Please see the following PPT. This material is intended to educate university students, including Korea. The ancient historical value of Kaya X should be educated. Its goal is to accurately understand world history through comparison with the history of neighboring countries. Recently, the United Nations UNESCO designated the historic site of Gaya as a cultural heritage. College students should think about how this cultural heritage should be utilized. Then we will teach the methodology of how to study the 6 specific areas of Kaya X. Thank you.
Thank you. Good presentations for this, Dr. Kim. So this is all of the hours presentation. Thank you. I hope to good success the 21st International Social Congress in Moscow. Thank you.